Knight to f3. Knight to f6. Pawn to g3. Pawn to d5. Bishop to g2. Pawn to e6. King to g1. Bishop to e7. Pawn to d3. White established a King's Indian attack structure. The d6 pawn supports the c5 and e5 pawn breaks. King to g8. Bishop to f4, developing the bishop and increasing the control of the central e5 square. Pawn to h6, removing the g6 square from White's knight and bishop. Pawn to a4, grabbing some space in the queen side. White is playing in hyper-modern style. He is controlling the center with minor pieces instead of pawns. Knight to c6. Everything is revolving around the e5 square. This is move 7, and we have a brand new position. There are no games from here in Chess Masters database. Pawn to c3, restricting the c6 horse and preparing the queenside expansion. Pawn to a5, preventing White from expanding on the queenside with b4. Knight to a3, a thematic move that coordinates with a4. The horse plans to use the rim of the board as a trampoline to jump to a better square. Knight to h5, a good move, repelling the bishop that protects the e5 square. Bishop to d2. Pawn to e5. Black's strategy has succeeded. He won the e5 fight. Pawn to e4. White takes his share of the center. Pawn to e4. Pawn to e4. Knight to f6. The knight has already done his job, and there is nothing more to do on the rim, so he goes back to f6 and attacks e4. Queen to e2. Bishop to a3, removing a potential dangerous knight and misplacing White's rook. Rook to a3. Pawn to b6, opening a window for the bishop. Pawn to b4. Queen to e7, paralyzing the b4 pawn. Queen to c4. Queen to d6. Rook to a1, moving the rook out of the dangerous a6 f1 diagonal and increasing the pressure on the file. However, it's very improbable that Black will allow the opening of the file. Bishop to e6. Queen to e2. Bishop to g4. The bishop keeps his sight on White's queen. Pawn to b5. Knight to d8. Pawn to h3. Bishop to f3, a great move. Bishop to f3. Black has voluntarily given up the bishop pair. White's dark squared bishop is already restricted, and the two knights have good outposts. Knight to e6. Bishop to e3. The e3 bishop stands in the front to fight with the e6 knight. Rook to d8, taking the control of the open d-file. Queen to c4, activating the queen, and in particular protecting c5. Queen to d3, a great move, forcing the exchange of queens, otherwise the white queen has to retreat to a more passive square. Queen to d3. Rook to d3. Bishop to e2, hitting the rook. Black to play, pause the video and find the best move. Tick-tack, tick-tack. I hope you found it. Rook to e3, a brilliant move. Black sacrifices the exchange, takes away White's bishop pair, wins a pawn and damages White's pawn structure. Pawn to e3. Knight to e4. The two horses have transformed into octopuses. White pieces are disorganized. He can try to invade through the d-file, however Black can always block it with knight to d6. King to g2. Knight to c5. Rook to d1. Knight to d6, blocking the d-file. Note that the two knights are on dark squares, therefore they have the light squares under control. Rook to d5. Rook to e8. Pawn to g4. Pawn to g6. Black places his pawn on a light square to restrict the mobility of White's bishop. King to f1. Where's the king going? King to g7. The monarch begins his slow walk. He dreams to reach e6 and help in the protection of the d-file. King to e1. King to f6. Pawn to h4. King to e6. Rook to d1. White is playing without one rook. The a3 rook was inactive for around 20 moves. Pawn to h5. Pawn to h5. Pawn to h5. Yes, the h4 pawn is hanging, however it is a bait to distract White's bishop from the defense of the c4 square. Rook to a2, finally activating the a3 rook. Rook to g8. Bishop to f3. Knight to f5, double attack. King to f2. White's king protects the invasion through the g-file. Knight to h4. Black now has two pawns for the exchange. Bishop to d5, making the wooden shield with a check. King to e7. Rook to h1. Rook to g4. Pawn to c4. Knight to d3. King to f1. Knight to f5 attacking e3 and threatening a fork on g3. Rook to h3. Knight to g3. The two knights are creating a net around white's king. King to g2. Pawn to h4 increasing the stability of the g3 octopus. King to g1. Pawn to e4 blocking white's bishop and increasing the stability of the d6 octopus. Rook to h2. Knight to e5 defending h4 by threatening a fork on f3. Rook to a2. White is running out of moves. Pawn to f5. Pawn to c5. White pieces are paralysed. The only hope now is to open the queen side and activate the rook through the c-file. Knight to e2 double check. King to f1. Knight to c3 double attack. Rook to d2. Knight to f3. The d2 rook can no longer protect the d5 bishop. White is forced to give back the exchange. Rook to f3. Pawn to f3. Bishop to c6 instead of taking the f3 pawn. White prefers to prepare the activation of his rook via d7. Pawn to h3. Probably black soar till the end from this position. Pause the video and predict the future. Rook to d7. King to e6. Rook to c7. Pawn to h2. Bishop to f3 preventing black from promoting his h-pawn. Rook to g1. King to f2. Knight to e4. All forced moves. King to e2. Knight to g5. Rook to c6. King to e7. Pawn to b6. Will white also get a queen? Knight to f3. Pawn to b7. Queen to h1. Queen to b8. Queen to g2. And white resigns. Task finds the checkmate in 3.